My sister blocked my son with her arm and said, "This table is for well-behaved kids." Her daughter was already sitting there, laughing. I didn't argue. I grabbed our coats and left. That night, I canceled the $9,000 winter house I'd booked for the family trip. 2 days later, she texted, "What time should we check in?" I smiled and replied, "Last Christmas morning, my daughter Zoe woke up giddy, bouncing around the living room like it was the best day of her life. She's 9 and she still believes in magic even though she pretends she doesn't." My parents had invited us over for Christmas dinner like always, though something fell off this year. I just didn't know what yet. Zoe's gift from me was wrapped in 3 layers of Frozen-themed paper. When she tore it open and saw the brand new iPhone inside, she froze, then looked up at me like she couldn't believe it was real. The joy on her face made every late-night overtime shift worth it. I had it all set up, contacts, games, passcode, everything. Or so I thought. She pressed the power button, and the screen lit up. Then she frowned. "Mama, who's that?" I looked at the phone. It wasn't the wallpaper I set. It was a photo of my sister Claire, her husband Greg, their 2 kids, and Zoe from a backyard barbecue a few years ago. I'd never sent them that photo. I didn't even remember having it saved. Zoe didn't understand. He just thought it was weird. I took the phone and started looking through it. Everything else seemed clean. No photos, no messages, no contacts. Just one calendar event for that day at 4:00 p.m. Music, dinner at Claire's. It was saved under an Apple ID I didn't recognize. The account had been logged in just days earlier, but the only device signed into that account was this one. It didn't make sense. I bought that phone sealed. I even double-checked the receipt to make sure it was new. At first, I thought maybe I'd made a mistake. Maybe I'd mixed something up during setup. But then at 12:10 p.m., I got a text from my mom. "Hey, Grace. Quick change of plans. Just keeping it small this year. Claire's hosting for her in-laws. Let's do something next week, maybe. Love you." I just stared at it. The message was calm, casual, but we were already dressed. The pie was cooling on the counter. Zoe had helped me make it the night before, the same way we do every year. I reread the text 3 times before I said anything. Zoe didn't ask questions. She just sat at the kitchen table with the iPhone in her hands, flipping through the empty screens. I told her we'd figure something out. Maybe go see a movie. I couldn't tell her what was actually happening. At 4:03 p.m., I checked to find my iPhone. I still had family sharing connected to her new phone and hadn't removed the old setup yet. I opened the location, pinged right in front of me, Claire's house, the one she claimed she wasn't hosting anything at. I didn't go over right away. I waited 2 hours. I cleaned up the wrapping paper. I poured a glass of wine and sat on the couch. Then I packed up the pie, told Zoe to grab her jacket, and drove. Her car was parked in the driveway. So were my parents. The porch light was on. Through the front window, I could see Christmas lights strung around the banister and someone, maybe Claire's daughter, running around in a sparkly red dress. When Claire opened the door and saw me standing there with Zoe and the pie, she froze. I didn't say a word. I just held up the iPhone. That's when Greg stormed over. His voice shot up before I even stepped inside. My dad appeared a few seconds later trying to lower the volume and keep the peace. My mom stood behind them, both silent. They weren't even going to deny it. Claire never looked me in the eye. They knew I was going to figure it out. They just didn't think I'd show up. And they definitely didn't think I'd take it as far as I did next. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream or push my way in. I just stood at the threshold holding the phone in one hand, the pie in the other, and watched the panic ripple through them. Greg was the first to explode. He marched straight toward me like I kicked down the door. Demanded to know what I was doing crashing their Christmas. Said I was out of line. Said it was Claire's house. Claire's rules. My mom showed up in the hallway next, already shaking her head like she wanted to erase me from the room. They all looked guilty, but nobody wanted to admit it. I asked a single question, not to Greg, not even to Claire. I asked my dad, the one person in this family who used to be neutral, or at least better at pretending, where did the phone come from? He stammered. I watched him look over at Claire, then back at my mom. Nobody answered. Claire shifted her weight like she was just trying to get through this and move on. I asked again, whose idea was it to hand my daughter a used phone and pretend it was new with a calendar invite to a dinner she wasn't even supposed to know about? Still nothing. Zoe was holding the pie the entire time. She didn't say a word, just stared at Greg wide-eyed, probably trying to make sense of who he'd suddenly become. I told her gently to go back to the car and wait. She walked out without a single question. He's smart. He knew. As soon as the door shut behind her, I looked back at my family and told them I was going to Apple the next day, that I'd be reporting the device and tracing the Apple ID. That's when the chaos started. Greg stepped forward, red in the face, yelling about how I was being dramatic and causing a scene in front of the kids. My dad tried to pull him back. My mom stood there, arms crossed, completely silent. Claire finally spoke, told me it was just a mistake, that I was blowing things out of proportion. She actually had the nerve to suggest that maybe Zoe misunderstood the whole thing. I didn't say anything back. I just turned around and left. Instead of going home, I drove Zoe to a 24-hour diner. She had pancakes and chocolate milk. I watched her giggle at whipped cream shaped like a snowman. I smiled, but I wasn't really there. My mind was already moving. 3 days later, I found out exactly what had triggered everything. My cousin Jenny called and said, kind of nervously, "Hey, did you know Claire flipped out after she saw Zoe in the newspaper?" That's when it all clicked. Zoe had been recognized for winning a regional science award. Her school got a grant because of it. She was in the paper, smiling in front of her project. It was a big deal. I hadn't told anyone in the family because I knew exactly how Claire operated, but apparently Jenny had commented under the photo on Facebook, tagging me and Zoe. That was enough. Claire saw it, and apparently that night at my parents' house, she let loose, ranting about how I was pushing Zoe, how it was unhealthy, and how kids need to be kids. Then she threw in the part that really set the tone. She didn't want her kids feeling less than on Christmas. Said it wasn't fair to make Zoe the center of attention again. That was the word Jenny used at S.O. Claire told my parents to keep things low-key this year. No big gathering, just her and the in-laws. My parents, spineless as ever, agreed. Just like that, Zoe and I were cut out of Christmas. I sat with that for a full day. Then I opened my banking app. I didn't say anything to Claire. Didn't warn her. I just canceled the auto payment. For the last 12 months, I'd been covering her rent, $3,200 a month. Ever since Greg got laid off and they needed help staying in their neighborhood for the kids' school. I never told anyone, just did it quietly. She said they'd only need a few months. It had been a year. When the next rent cycle hit and the payment didn't go through, Claire texted me, said there must have been a bank glitch. I left her on read. A few hours later, she texted again, this time less polite. By evening, she called me 4 times. I ignored them all. The next morning, I woke up to a message from my mom. "Grace, I know you're upset, but this is unnecessary. Can you please not make things harder for your sister?" No mention of Zoe. No apology. Not even an acknowledgement of what happened. That's when I realized this wasn't going to fix itself. They didn't think they'd done anything wrong. To them, I was just being emotional, overreacting, making things difficult. But I wasn't finished. That if they thought I'd made things difficult, they hadn't seen anything yet. Claire didn't waste time. 3 days after the rent payment failed, she sent me a long-winded email full of vague references to how families go through rough patches and how she was hurt by the way I'd handled things. She closed it with a line about how it's not Zoe's fault, which honestly pissed me off more than the rest of it. As if Zoe had accidentally stumbled into an award she didn't deserve. As if Zoe was the reason for the fallout that I didn't respond. The next day, Greg texted me something short. No greeting. No punctuation. You need to fix this. I blocked his number. That week, the family group chat, which I hadn't looked at since Christmas Eve, started lighting up. My mom posted a picture of Claire's kids with a gingerbread house. A few aunts chimed in with heart emojis. Then my dad added, "So proud of these angels. Real team spirit." I left the group chat. Jenny called me not long after. She said she was getting the cold shoulder from Claire because she told me the truth. Then she dropped the next piece of the puzzle. Apparently, my parents had planned to have all the grandkids sleep over that weekend at their house, like a little post-Christmas tradition. But now Claire told them she didn't want Zoe there. Said she didn't want to deal with the tension. Told my mom she'd prefer it to be just her kids and Lucas, our cousin's son. When my mom agreed again, that was it for me. I didn't tell Zoe. I just told her plans changed. She didn't ask why, but I could see she knew something wasn't right. She stopped talking about school as much. She went quiet when I asked about her drawings. And one night, I caught her looking through that iPhone again, flipping back to the lock screen like she expected something new to show up. I took the phone and threw it in a drawer. I couldn't stand the sight of it. Claire, meanwhile, was spiraling. Without the rent money, she and Greg started scrambling. Jenny heard from a friend who worked in property management that the landlord had already issued a notice. Claire posted a vague story on Instagram about people who stab you in the back but smile to your face. But that wasn't the part that got me. The part that really got to me was how fast my parents turned into her mouthpieces. My dad called me first, tried to reason, said Claire was struggling, that they were trying to keep the family together. I asked if he remembered who kept Claire afloat for the past year. He said, "We're all just trying to move past this." Then my mom tried. She told me Claire was embarrassed but didn't know how to apologize. Told me, "This family needs you, Grace." I asked her one question. "Did you really agree to cut your only granddaughter out of Christmas?" She went quiet. Then she said, "It wasn't like that." That was enough of an answer. From there, everything started to crack. I pulled out of the joint family vacation we'd planned for spring. I canceled the rental cabin under my name. Claire texted me within 20 minutes. "So you're really going to ruin it for everyone now? Grow up." I blocked her too. Then the birthday party invites slowly stopped. First Claire's son, then my cousin Melissa's daughter. The exclusion was quiet and gradual. No one in the family said anything. No one asked why Zoe stopped showing up. No one checked in except Jenny. She stayed close, saying it felt like watching a slow-motion car crash. She asked if I planned to forgive them. I told her no. This wasn't about forgiveness. It was about boundaries. About making sure Zoe never thought being good at something meant being punished for it. And I still wasn't done. That I remembered that last March, Claire had asked me to co-sign Lucy's private school application. She said it was just a formality. I'd forgotten about it, but my name was still there. So I called the school and removed myself as co-signer. By Friday, Claire called from an unknown number and demanded to know what I'd done. I hung up. Greg texted later, accusing me of thinking I was better than everyone. I blocked him again. That night, I took Zoe out for dinner, then we went home and watched her favorite Christmas movie. For the first time in weeks, she relaxed. The next morning, I found an envelope on my doormat. Inside was an old family photo, with a black X drawn over Zoe's face. On the back it read, "Enjoy your win. Hope your daughter learns what losing feels like." It was subtle, but it was a threat. I didn't tell anyone. Something shifted after that. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Soon after, Jenny told me Claire and Greg had pulled Lucy from private school. Without financial aid, they couldn't afford it. Lucy would be transferring to the same public school as Zoe. Later that day, Lucy messaged me asking why her mom was blaming me. She was 12, caught in something she didn't create. I didn't reply. The family silence grew louder. No invites. No messages. Just passive-aggressive Facebook posts about family loyalty. Then my dad showed up unannounced. He admitted it wasn't just Claire who wanted Zoe excluded from Christmas. My mom had suggested it too. That's when I knew my parents were complicit. When I asked if Zoe had even been considered, he couldn't answer. 3 days later, I received a credit alert. Someone had tried to open a card in my name. The attempt was flagged, but all my personal details were used. Only 2 people had access to that information, Claire and my mother. I froze my credit, reported the fraud, and reviewed old paperwork. The proof was there. I considered calling the police, but I waited. Because once I did, there would be no going back. 2 days later, I got an email from Claire's landlord. The landlord emailed to say Claire had listed me as her emergency contact. She was over 30 days behind on rent, and eviction had started. He asked if I'd be stepping in again. I stared at the email, then replied, "Do not contact me again. She no longer has my support. Remove my information immediately." No signature. No pleasantries. I think that was the moment it finally hit Claire that I wasn't coming back. The next night, my mom called. I didn't answer. She texted, "We need to talk." I didn't know things had gotten this far. "Please don't destroy your sister." That word again, destroy. As if I'd been the one swinging. A few hours later, Claire posted a long Facebook rant about family betrayal and false generosity. No names, but it was obvious. Greg shared posts about people showing their true colors. I stayed silent, but Zoe noticed. She asked why we didn't go to Grandma's anymore. I told her some people weren't being kind, and it wasn't a place we needed to be. She accepted that and went back to drawing. Soon after, Claire and Greg moved in with my parents. Then the calls started again, pleading, accusing, desperate. "You're dividing the family. Don't let money ruin this." That one made me laugh. Then I got a call from Zoe's school. The counselor said Lucy had been telling other kids Zoe bragged and was mean. There'd been arguments and one lunchroom incident where Zoe sat alone. I explained it to Zoe calmly. She didn't cry. She just said, "I don't want to be like them." That night, I wrote everything down. Every payment, the phone, the credit attempt, the threats. Then I called my lawyer, not to press charges, just to remove Claire from anything tied to my name and protect Zoe. After that, I blocked everyone. My parents, Claire, Greg, even cousins who played both sides. Later, Jenny sent me a screenshot. Claire had started a GoFundMe called Help Us Rebuild a Family Torn Apart. The story painted them as victims. Family members donated. I didn't respond publicly, but I reported it for false claims and submitted proof. 2 days later, the fundraiser was gone. After that, the fallout came quietly. Then I received a handwritten letter from Lucy. She said she missed Zoe and asked if she could still be her cousin. I cried, not because it changed my mind, but because it showed how far the damage spread on a quiet Sunday. I packed everything. The phone, the photo, the letter, the documents, and locked it away. No final confrontation. Just silence. I changed my number. I closed old accounts. I stopped showing up. Eventually, they stopped trying. And no, I never felt guilty. Because when family treats your child's light as a threat, when they use exclusion and weaponize your kindness, revenge isn't destruction, it's walking away while they're still holding the matches.